joined today by Merv Character, former alum of UCLA, Harvard Law School, consultant for Merrill Lynch for many, many years, and general, all-round great guy. Merv, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
First question, how old were you and how did you make your first $1 million?
It's too long ago for me to remember. And also, I didn't count the dollars every month, so I don't really know. Probably in the 70s.
And what was the vehicle you used to create your first major piece of wealth?
Well, I accumulated a lot of money as a lawyer and as an investor in the stock market. And in 1988, I sold the property where I had my law office and made quite a bit of money on that sale, and then parlayed that after that into more, mostly in the market.
What did it feel like? Was there a real sense of accomplishment when you realized that you banged through 7 figures, 9 figures?
Well, I felt a certain sense of relief in the liquidity. When I sold my first piece of real estate and took in a significant amount of money, I realized I wouldn't have any more liquidity problems. I had enough cash to do what I wanted to do, including investments, and that felt good.
So you've now got liquid, you now want to jump into the stock market. Why stock options as opposed to maybe the general market?
Well, there's nothing wrong with the general market, and I'm in the general market, and I buy some stocks to hold for long periods of time. But stock options enable me to protect my other investments in the market, for one thing, and enable me to increase my income from my holdings, which is a second feature. And as a third feature, if I have holdings that go down in value, I can continue to hold them and get a satisfactory income from them with stock options until they go back up.
With this liquidity, you've managed to parlay that into traveling around the world, memberships of golf clubs. Are you currently a member of a club?
I'm a member of Riviera Country Club, which is very close to my home.
One of the most spectacular golf clubs in the world, perhaps?
A little bit tougher than probably I should be playing at, but I'm managing.
How do you become a member of Riviera?
Well, in 1988, I decided to retire from managing my law firm, close up my law firm. It was a lot of stress. And I thought, well, I better prepare for things to do. And one thing I thought I would do is I would play golf several times a week. It didn't work out that way, but I retired and I went home and I said to my wife, honey, what's for lunch? And she said, I took you for better or worse, but not for lunch. Go back to work. So one of the things I did in preparation for retirement, which never really happened, was to join Riviera.
What's the process for joining Riviera?
I don't know what it is. Well, now I think the process is really, really difficult. They don't even want to sell memberships. Since a Japanese company bought it, they've sort of discouraged people from joining. They only want great big corporations that can afford to pay a down payment of $250,000. So the average guy, even a wealthy average guy, is sort of out of luck. But back in the 80s, I think I paid something like $30,000 for a membership, and that was about it.
A bargain?
Well, that was a fair amount of money in those days, a lot more than it seems like it is today.
Are there yearly dues?
Yeah. There's substantial dues, and they charge for every little thing. They have a separate charge for the guy that shines your shoes, and separate charge for the guy that keeps your bag, and separate charge for the guy that manages tournaments, and a separate charge for this, and a separate charge for that, and a minimum charge for having lunch or dinner there. And
is there still a fee to play golf?
It's a really nice place to play golf. It's really beautiful, and the owners maintain it scrupulously. I mean, I remember seeing a little stain on the carpet in the locker room, and the next week I came there and they'd replaced all the carpet.
You like traveling the world. Do you have homes anywhere?
I have had a lot of vacation homes over the years. I think at one point I had 2 condos in Hawaii, a ski lodge in France, a ski lodge in Vail, a ski lodge with a friend of mine in Mammoth. I still have a house in France near Saint-Tropez. But little by little, as I've gotten older, I've gotten rid of most of them. I sold my sailboat a few years ago, which was a big emotional experience for me, which I still feel. But I'm working more and traveling and vacationing less. I enjoy the work more and more.
What kind of sailboat did you have?
I had a 43-foot ketch-rigged wood-hulled boat built in New Zealand in 1968 that I bought in 1972 and owned for, I guess, 40 years or more.
What did you pay for it?
I paid, I think, it had been foreclosed by the Bank of America and was sitting unwanted in a boatyard in Ventura. And the bank was so glad to get rid of it. I think I paid them $5,000 in costs to reimburse them for their cost of retaking it in the foreclosure.
And something makes me think you may have sold it for a profit?
No, I got out at about my cost, but I used the boat for 40 years and had just great, great experiences.
I also understand you like a nice glass of wine.
One of the things I prepared for in retirement was I went into the wine business with my wife, and we traveled around France and Italy 2 or 3 months out of the year, buying wines from really small producers, a lot of whom didn't speak English and didn't know how to get their wines into the United States and didn't have enough production for the big importers. And I built up a really nice, profitable little wine company, which I sold then after about 15 years.
What would you say is the most expensive bottle of wine you've ever drunk, and how was it?
Well, I can say for sure that it isn't something that I bought. But I remember a great, great bottle of Echezeaux Burgundy at my friend Reed Kaplan's house one time. And I'm still a consultant to a couple of companies that sell wine all over the world, and the owners and managers of those companies often have really, really good bottles of wine I'm invited to participate in. I don't remember myself ever buying a super expensive bottle of wine, but I've never needed to.
In terms of automobiles, I know you currently drive a Cadillac. Has that been one of your biggest treats to give yourself a very nice car?
Not what I would call a very nice car. I had a friend who was a car dealer in Santa Monica. His last name was Vrooman, and we all called him Vrooter. I don't even remember his first name, but he and I collected 8 antique cars together. We had a really nice collection, and we worked on them and restored them. And I kept one of them. He passed away, and we sold off most of the cars. I kept a 1937 Zephyr, which I drove and then put aside for a while. And I had a 1936 Cord, which I actually drove every day to work for many, many years. And I had a 1937 Lagonda boat-tailed Speedster, which I just relocated. The guy that bought it is in Thousand Oaks, and I might buy it back. But and I had a 1976 Rolls Royce, which I also drove to work for many years. I donated the Zephyr and the Rolls Royce to the Car Museum in San Diego, and I decided I wanted an all-electric car. And I wanted a car that, for the first time in my life, would have seat belts, power steering, and automatic windows. And so I bought an electric Cadillac.
Tell me about your place in the Santa Monica Canyon. When did you buy it? How much did you pay for it? How big is it? It seems like an absolutely gorgeous property.
We were really fortunate. We bought that house in 1966. We're coming on 50 years pretty soon. And it was pretty run down. It is painted, we're not sure what it was. It sort of looked like a brothel. It was owned by some sort of famous people over the years. It was built in 1922 by a silent film star named Matt Mason, I think, whose family, when he passed away, his family brought me pictures that he had taken of the development of the house. And when I first started practicing law, the owners of that house were getting divorced, and we assisted them in selling off a little lot next door, which I subsequently reacquired. But I've got a little under an acre. I've got a tennis court on one side and a really good-sized swimming pool and guest house on the other side. And I paid, I was actually in a telephone auction with a movie star named Hermione Baddeley. And we were bidding against each other by telephone, and I ended up winning at $93,000.
And it's currently now worth?
You know, it's hard to know. I'm going to guess $8 to $10 million. But a lot of homes in my neighborhood are selling for 12 to 15 million, but they're newer. So I think people like newer homes. I like older homes. I like the Spanish feel, Mediterranean feel, the old tiles.
What are the tools I can use to increase my income with W yield?
Well, let me start out by saying the best way to get rich is to create value. And so if you have skills, for example, in building a house, and you buy an empty lot and you build a house on it, that's a really good way to get rich. Now, most people don't have those skills, or they're busy working and they don't have the time. So the next best thing you can do is own a piece of a company run by people that do have those skills. I don't think I could ever be smart enough to create an iPhone, but I own a little bit of Apple stock. Those people were able to really create value, and because of that, I was able to share in their value creation. So one way, obviously, is to buy stock in really good companies that have people that know how to create value. And then, of course, comes the question of, okay, I own the stock, what do I do with it? And that's typically where options come into play. Because if you get a stock like Apple, it has a very small dividend. And now you've got your net worth tied up in one stock. And even if it goes up, you probably don't want to sell it, as long as it's still creating value and new products are coming out. And so the question is, how can I increase my annual yield on that, which, by the way, makes a huge difference over a 10 or 20-year period. If you can slightly increase your annual yield, it makes a huge difference to your investment. That's what options can do for you.
So with my $50,000 a year salary, what could I, if I'm investing in W yield, say between $5,000 and $10,000, what can I expect to get as a return?
Well, you don't invest your money with W yield. You invest it with a really trusted stockbroker. And you can invest a few dollars by joining W yield. And what you get from it primarily at the outset is education. You learn how options can help you increase your net worth, what they can do for you. And little by little, you get more and more education, and you have a chance to put it into practice. Just like riding a bicycle, if somebody just writes something to describe how to stay upright on a bicycle, you can study it, but until you do it, probably you're not going to be very adept. So it's the same thing with stock options. You study it, and then you practice it, and then you become adept at it.
What makes you such a good options trader?
I think it's just experience from doing it for many, many years. And also, I like numbers. I'm a numbers person. And so I think that helps in handling options.
In your years of trading options, what's been your biggest win?
Oh, I'm not sure about that. I've had two really big wins in the last year. I shorted Mattel stock when it was, I think, around 35, and it went down to around 25. And even bigger, I shorted the euro when it was about $1.30, and it's hovering about $1.11 now. And I took a lot of money off the table there, and then I went back in because I think it's going to go down further by the end of the year. Those two hits generated a lot of cash for me.
How did you come to that decision that Mattel and the euro were both going to go down?
From reading. I read a lot of information about toy companies, and they were all really negative about Mattel, and Mattel's earnings were going to come out about a month later, and I just said to myself, I'll bet their earnings are going to be really bad, because the Barbie doll was getting really out of vogue, and then there were all these issues that people were talking about, how Barbie was not ethnic conscious, and I could just tell the attitude of the market was getting negative. As to the euro, I read a lot of information generated by really big bank investment departments. And there again, there was unanimity that the euro was going to go down. And most of them said it was going to go down to what's called parity, which means that 1 euro would equal $1. It hasn't done that yet, but I think maybe by the end of the year, they still might be right.
You've made all this money in the option trading market. Why do you want to share this information?
Well, I'm not sure I want to share it, but I guess it's almost like a religion. I keep reading negative things that people write about options, and I love options. I just think they're great, and I think they're misunderstood. So I just feel almost a compulsion to tell people, no, these are not bad things. This is a really wonderful thing that you can benefit from.
Can you, obviously you can't predict the market, but tell me how someone can protect themselves or hedge themselves within the stock option market?
Well, I'm glad you started out by saying that I can't predict the market, because that's one of the things we teach. A lot of these investment sites on the internet and brokerage houses are doing what's called timing. They think that they can predict whether a stock is going to go up or go down. I try that sometimes, and as I say, I had 2 lucky hits this year, but I would say by and large, I'm not sure that I'm right when I predict the stock is going to go up or go down. Timing to me is not the way to invest in the market. So I would say that the way to invest is to focus on garnering as much income as you can, not trying to figure out whether the market's going to go up or down.
How do you go about finding options that pay the best dividends?
Well, they're not dividends, they're premiums.
Premiums.
And we do have on our website a program which helps to visualize what the premiums are on a whole range of options on any stock or any combination of stocks. And I use that program Well, I look through the list of option premiums and I do an evaluation of how much premium I want to get in order to make it worthwhile to take whatever risk I'm taking.
Are the W yield tools, are they for beginners or for advanced traders?
There's a whole range of tools available. And we start out in our educational section with the really simple ones, writing what's called a covered call, which is when you own stock and you sell a call at a price that you would be willing to sell the stock at. Or selling what's called a naked put, where you sell a put at a price that you would be willing to acquire the stock at. I sold puts on Apple stock a few months ago when it was $135. I sold just a small amount in one of my kids' accounts. I sold 2 puts at a strike price of $120 because we had missed Apple stock as it shot past $120. And I said to myself, if by chance this stock were to go back down to $120 or below, I would like to buy it at that price. So somebody paid me a really generous premium for me to agree to buy Apple stock at $120. And I'm tickled pink because I would have bought it at $120 anyway.
In terms of someone who's just starting out, say you're 25 years old, you already work for an investment firm, but you're not making a great deal of money, do you think double your yield and the tools that you have can give you the information you need to make a decent income?
I don't know exactly what you mean by decent income, and that varies from person to person. But I know a case where a fellow passed away and his son inherited something like $2 million in family stock, and the son was collecting a small dividend on it, but it's $2 million. But the dividend wasn't enough to pay for his lifestyle. It didn't even pay for the gas of his Maserati. And so we showed him how to increase his yield on his stock. I'm not sure he still considers it a decent income, but he's making a lot more money on it than he did before.
Give us the benefits of signing up for W Yield and for having consultations with you, Merv Hecht.
Well, the benefits depend greatly, not so much on me, but on you. If you're really interested in learning about the market, and if you agree with some of our principles, such as depending on anticipating whether a stock is going to go up or down is not such a good way to invest. If you agree with those principles and you have some money to put in the market and you agree to diversify it and you want to learn and practice, I think you can earn more on your investment than you would otherwise. Is it enough to make you rich overnight? No, it's not. In order to get rich overnight, you have to do something different.
So how long do you think a decent period of investing would be before you, say, trebled your yield or quadrupled your yield? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 2 years?
It depends in part on how much money you have to invest and how much risk you're willing to take.
Well, talk to me about risk. What would be the conditions that would create something in a high-risk situation?
If you have a lot of excess money and your primary goal is to parlay it into a very large amount of money, the first rule is don't go in the wine business. The second rule is buy a diversified portfolio of high-tech stocks including those kind of stocks that are in the biomedical field. It's sort of like drilling oil wells, what are called wildcat oil wells. If you drill one wildcat oil well, you're almost certainly going to lose your money. If you drill 10 of them, you're probably going to lose your money on 9 of them and make a really big hit on the 10th. So that's how I view that kind of investing. If you invest in 10 or 20 really low-priced, problematic companies, maybe one of them is going to hit. I do that sometimes in my kids' accounts. And we hit one really nice one, a 3D printer company. When 3D printing, nobody had heard of it, and I didn't know what it was for sure, but somebody said it's a wonderful thing. And we bought some stock in all my kids' accounts, and that's done really, really well. As to how long it takes, that's just an impossible question. There's just so many different parameters and so many decisions on how much risk you want to take. And then there's the issue of using options to buy insurance so that you don't lose all of your money, even if you invest in high-risk investments.
What would be your advice to a young 25-year-old kid who wants to put their toe into the option market?
I would go into the W Yield site and spend some time reading all the educational materials. Then I'd go into the portfolio manager and set up what I call a dummy account. That is an account, a hypothetical account. And I would make some trades, and I would see if I made money or lost money had I actually put my money into those trades. And I would do it for a few months and get really proficient at it, and then I'd start doing it with real money.
One last question, Merv. When W Yield subscribers have the opportunity to sit down and chat with you, what kind of advice will you be giving them?
The same kind of advice I've been giving you in this interview. It doesn't vary very much. But you had asked before about my willingness to talk with investors. I do that all the time, and I'm always available to talk with people, not just about investments, but about anything.
Merv Hecht, investment genius, golfer, world traveler, a drinker of fine wines. Merv, it's been a pleasure.
And an avid sailor.
And an avid sailor. Thank you very much.